On the investigation into the death of Ashlee Robinson. Her family is demanding answers after the influencer from South Jersey was found dead during a trip to Africa where she had just been engaged.
She just lost her life while she was supposed to be celebrating and having a dream vacation in Zanzibar with her new fiance. I mean, we're talking about a birthday. We're talking about an engagement that happened on her.
The call was shocking. It was devastating and scary, honestly, because we don't know what's going on, what happened.
Listen, this wasn't meant for the tabloids. It was designed as a silent retreat, a steamy getaway, a romance blossoming behind guarded gates in Zanzibar. Instead, it morphed into something sinister, something haunting, something that currently has everyone demanding answers nobody can actually provide. Because the nightmare involving Ashlee Jenae doesn't feel like a mere accident. It feels like something scripted, something orchestrated, something that exploded the second the mask slipped. And per Jaguar Wright, that reality is precisely what put Ashlee Jenae in peril. We are viewing a dynamic that appeared flawless on camera. But within those luxury walls, leaks suggest endless bickering, escalating friction, and a level of madness that witnesses couldn't disregard. Then comes the bombshell that flips everything. Ashlee Jenae reportedly realized that Joe McCann wasn't merely her partner. He was sustaining a secret double existence. And the second she blinked, everything broke. Now, here's where it becomes truly twisted. Ashlee Jenae is discovered inside a bolted room, dangling in a closet, clinging to life. Joe McCann, he allegedly leads away with a solid narrative. But then a wedding band appears in a vehicle, smeared with gore. Process that. If this was what they claim, then why is nothing making sense? Why are medical reports being suppressed? Why was Ashlee Jenae allegedly warning peers she was terrified? And why are rumors swelling faster that this wasn't just a breakup gone bad, but something much more cold-blooded? Jaguar Wright didn't just mention this, she nuked it. And now the mystery isn't the event, it's who is working to ensure you stay blind.
Got her to where she is now. That's the thing that's still boggling my mind, because right now, I'm telling you right now, guys, this story is far from over. There's a lot of deep diving into this. A lot of people are wanting to know, did something sinister actually happen or not?
Ashlee's final posts on social media were of her celebrating her birthday with giraffes in Tanzania, Africa, and getting engaged to her boyfriend, Joseph McCann. But there's a local report claiming initial investigations determined Ashlee took her own life during the trip after falling out with her fiancé just days after he...
The true horror of this saga isn't the finale. It's the terrifying speed at which reality disintegrated the moment Ashlee Jenae touched down in Zanzibar. To the public, it mirrored a fairy tale getaway. A groom-to-be, a secluded estate, a perfect sanctuary to escape the chaos. But beneath that polished, filtered surface, the rot had already set in. Insiders reported friction almost instantly. Not some quiet friction you can brush off, but screeching, toxic brawls that echoed far past the property lines. Employees apparently clocked the vibe shift. Locals allegedly overheard screaming matches, relentless clashing, and psychological collapses that shattered the illusion of a happy pair. This wasn't a holiday. It was a pressure cooker redlining in real time. Then comes the bombshell that rewrites the script. According to allegations platformed by Jaguar Wright, Ashlee Jenae didn't just hit a speed bump. She unmasked the truth she was never supposed to find. Joe McCann, the man she idolized, the man she pledged her life to, was reportedly juggling a fraudulent double existence. Not whispers, not hunches, something undeniable enough to spark a war. The clock accelerates here because once that mask fell, the spiral turned lethal. Intel indicates that Ashlee Jenae challenged Joe McCann head-on. Whatever was screamed in that room stays buried, but the fallout is what's triggering global sirens. Eyewitness reports paint a night where tempers weren't just hot, they were nuclear, and then the official timeline suddenly glitches. Formally, the story is basic. Ashlee Jenae finishes the night isolated in a detached suite. Joe McCann is positioned miles out in a completely different zone. A tidy gap, a managed divorce of space. On paper, it builds a chronology that feels effortless, almost too surgical, because the ensuing carnage doesn't fit that clean narrative.
Happy, she was excited about life and looking forward to her future. So now you got two completely different narratives.
Officially, no, we have not talked to anyone from the police or anybody in the medical field at all. Nothing.
But Tanzania don't care about who he is or how much he's worth. You think you're going to come up in their country and unalive they people? Because people, granted, she is from Kenya. She has citizenship both in Kenya and in the U.S. Not only, but that is the same exact reason why they seized his passport and he's been detained.
Now an employee allegedly creeps toward Ashlee Jenae's suite. It's pitch black. No answer. A void where there should be life. When that door finally yields, the carnage inside isn't peaceful and it certainly isn't digestible in a single breath. Ashlee Jenae is discovered shoved inside a wardrobe, hanging, but still breathing, fighting, not deceased. That specific horror shatters the entire official story. This wasn't some quick finale. This was an ordeal that transpired, something that left evidence, marks, and massive holes behind. Yet, instead of transparency, the plot only thickens. Because then we get the ring, her engagement diamond. That symbol, that treasure, isn't found on her body. It's recovered inside a vehicle. Not merely lost, but reportedly drenched in blood. That one sickening detail has forced the world to stop swallowing the PR version at face value. If this was exactly what they're selling, how does that forensic nightmare exist in a totally different spot? It's a glitch. And when the math fails, people start hunting for the gaps. The autopsy is reportedly finished, but those findings remain buried. Her relatives are waiting, the internet is lurking, and the gag order on those results is only fueling the fire. Because in cases where the truth is simple, data flows. Here it froze. Then come the red flags. Per sources, Ashlee Jenae had voiced pure terror before the end. Not some vague unrest, but chilling warnings. She allegedly informed a confidant she was petrified, she wanted out, and that something about this trip felt like a trap. Those screams now carry a haunting gravity. Because when you stack them against the rest, the fights, the alleged betrayal, the isolation, that closet scene, they stop sounding like drama and start sounding like a distress flare. Jaguar Wright's rants didn't invent this mystery. They weaponized it. She didn't plant the doubt. She cranked the volume on questions that were already screaming, dragging them into a light that cannot be dimmed. And now, every fragment of this tragedy feels like it's vibrating just slightly out of place. Not enough to solve the puzzle, but more than enough to make you doubt every single word they've told you.
All right, hear me out. And maybe this is just me, but I just thought about it because I was driving on my way home. I'd really be ready to cut a nigga off over smoke. Like the littlest thing, I'd just be turned off, like, ugh. It was mad people in the regular lane. And the express lane was clear. I'm zooming through that. Pass it. Feet. As a grown man, in 2023, living in the state of Florida, specifically Dade County, Broward County, doing without a sun pass. Like, honestly, you want to just vibe in traffic. Vibe. Could take you 15 minutes to get somewhere. You want to chill out for the next 45 minutes sitting in a regular lane for what? It ain't gonna work with me, baby. It ain't gonna work. It ain't gonna work. I ain't gonna lie. I'm talking about, yo, babe, get over into the express lanes faster. Nah, like I ain't finna do all that.
What catapults this saga from unsettling to deeply predatory isn't just the carnage inside that suite. It's every surrounding detail that refuses to snap into a tidy plotline. Because once the law stepped in, the narrative didn't gain clarity. It gained a muzzle. Timelines were fed to the press, but they felt manufactured. Statements were issued, yet they left massive voids. And in those voids, the most damning questions began to fester. Joe McCann's distance from the horror quickly became the anchor of the official script. 10 minutes away, separate zip code. No physical link to the second Ashlee Jenae was discovered. On paper, it's a fortress. But distance only functions as a shield if every other forensic fact backs it up. And here, they crumble. Because while he was allegedly elsewhere, an ordeal was transpiring in that room that screams time, resistance, and escalation. This wasn't a sudden flash. This was a process that evolved, something that likely required more than just a solitary moment of choice. And that births a lethal inquiry. Was this timeline engineered after the blood dried, or are vital fragments simply being erased? Then comes the optics. According to viral reports, Joe McCann's energy before and after the trauma isn't matching the frequency of a grieving partner. There are whispers of contradictions, movements that don't quite sync with the formal log, and reactions that feel clinical, almost rehearsed, nothing final, but enough to keep the spotlight glued to him. Because in scandals like this, energy speaks louder than scripts. And then there's the crime scene itself.
Was starting the next chapter of her life. She called us and FaceTimed us to share with us her travel.
Ashlee's mother says she never would have expected that less than a week later, her daughter would be dead. On April 8th, she says Ashlee called, saying she and her fiance got into an argument and were moved to separate rooms. The next day, she received another call, this time from her fiance.
He told me that Ashlee did something to herself and that she was being taken to the hospital. I said, what happened when? And he told me it had been 11 hours prior.
Hours later, the luxury resort the couple was staying at called saying that Ashlee passed.
Zanzibar isn't just a scenery. It's a wild card. A territory where law, local power, and global heat collide in messy ways. When a tragedy like this strikes in a spot like that, data doesn't always travel the way the public demands. It can be throttled, scrubbed, or manicured, which makes the gag order on the medical report even more deafening because by now findings should have settled at least one chapter of this nightmare. Cause of demise, timing clues, forensic grit that either anchors or torpedoes the script being sold. But instead, there is stalling, no public briefing, no straight talk, and when official mouths shut, unofficial rumors scream. That is where Jaguar Wright's theories begin to hijack the feed. She didn't treat this like some remote spectator. She spoke with conviction, branding the disaster as something far more calculated than a fluke. According to her, this wasn't merely a toxic bond crashing into a wall. It was a scenario constructed on dominance, shadows, and gaslighting. Her most nuclear allegation slices right through the heart of the mystery, that Ashlee Jenae witnessed something she was never meant to witness. And from that second on, her fate was no longer in her hands. That claim alone has mutated how everyone is analyzing every scrap. Because if that is even slightly factual, then every shred of proof transforms into something else entirely. The gap becomes a tactic. The hush becomes a shield. The lack of clarity becomes a choice. And then there are the outside leaks. Murmurs hinting that this probe is pulling heat beyond local cops, that specific bureaus might be lurking in the wings, not intervening yet, but tracking how this breaks. Nothing verified, nothing formal. But the theory alone is piled on another shelf of dread because if external eyes are watching, it means there is more buried here than what is being shown.
I just spoke to the family of Ashlee Robinson. She's the 31-year-old influencer who was on vacation with her fiance celebrating her birthday. He actually proposed on the trip. But something crazy happened. She was having a good time. Her family said she was very excited to be there, shared pictures with the family, FaceTimed them when she was proposed to. But they released a statement saying that Ashlee was found unconscious in her villa and was rushed to a local hospital where her death was confirmed.
Hours afterward, the elite resort where the duo was lounging called announcing that Ashlee Jenae had died. And yet, despite all of this, no one has stepped up with a final explanation that fixes the glitches. Instead, the investigation rots in a state of managed confusion. A woman is deceased. A partner stands at the heart of ghosted inquiries. Major proof doesn't sync with the legal version. Vital files remain suppressed. And a figure like Jaguar Wright continues to blast a narrative that refuses to be silenced. At this stage, it's no longer merely about what transpired that evening. It's about why every effort to clarify it only seems to make it filthier. By the time this scandal hit the streets, it wasn't just a headline anymore. It was a glitch in the matrix. Every fresh leak didn't provide closure. It stretched the chasm between the PR spin and what actually computes. Because now the lens isn't just on the night Ashlee Jenae was discovered. It's on every red flag leading up to it and every shadow that followed. Cops might have sketched a timeline, but those deep in the circle are asking what got deleted from that script. Not minor blips, but lethal ones, the kind that dictate if this was a breakdown or something much more cold-blooded. Look at the crime scene, a closet, a cramped box, a setup that screams trap, not escape. Experts and lurkers have flagged how bizarre that staging is. Not impossible, but calculated. Manufactured. It forces the question of how things peaked at that exact coordinate and if Ashlee Jenae had any control in those final seconds. Then there's the trauma. She wasn't found deceased. She was found gasping. That fact continues to haunt every thread about this case because it injects time. It injects a fight. It injects the reality that whatever went down in that suite didn't happen in silence. And yet, there's zero logic on what stopped that struggle or who. Because while Ashlee Jenae was in that room, the narrative still parks Joe McCann at a distance, isolated, scrubbed, clean of the immediate horror. But distance in these games doesn't erase guilt. It evolves it. The world is viewing that gap differently now. Not as an exit, but as an architecture. Because if everything broke down exactly as claimed, then every gear should turn without grinding. But instead, every new leak feels like it's slamming against a hidden wall. The ring in the ride, the stalled autopsy, the gag orders from the top. None of it lands. It vibrates. And in that warping story, the spotlight has swerved toward what hasn't been mentioned at all. Data. Who chatted with Ashlee Jenae in her final moments? What texts were burned? What calls were placed? And more critically, what calls weren't? Digital fingerprints have a nasty way of exposing what physical evidence is trying to bury. Still, none of that has been displayed in a way the world can dissect, which creates a vacuum for theories to thrive uncontrolled. And that is precisely where figures like Jaguar Wright grab the mic. Because while the legal data stalls, her allegations skyrocket. She brands the disaster not as a freak accident, but as a piece of a bigger puzzle, one where power is held through muzzling and results are rigged long before they look like mishaps. Whether the public trusts her isn't the issue anymore. The issue is that her narrative forces the world to view this horror from a sharper perspective. One where nothing is a fluke and nothing is as basic as the PR claims. Meanwhile, Ashlee Jenae's relatives remain in a state of limbo. Waiting for truth, waiting for files, waiting for a degree of honesty that still hasn't landed. And that lag has mutated mourning into something darker, something closer to paranoia. Because when months vanish without transparency, faith begins to rot. At this point, the probe exists in two separate worlds. One is formal, sanitized, polished, anchored in distance, clocks, and curated data. The other is jagged, haunting, anchored in glitches, deleted info, and a swelling gut feeling that something vital is being buried. And the longer those two realities fail to merge, the louder the inquiries scream. What actually went down in that suite? Why does major proof feel severed from the script being sold? And why, despite the noise, does it still feel like the smoking gun of this scandal hasn't been leaked? Because until those facts emerge, this isn't a settled chapter. It's a jagged scar. And someone somewhere knows exactly how. This is where the whole thing stops feeling like a riddle and starts feeling like something that was never intended to be cracked. Because no matter the angle, the math fails. A woman reportedly petrified before her final breath. A partner buried in doubt but shielded by a gap. Evidence that refuses to sink. Files that stay locked. Hush where there should be truth. That isn't finality. That is manipulation. Jaguar Wright didn't just rattle this cage. She forced everyone to stare at what's being dodged. And once you spot it, you can't ignore it. This isn't just about the fate of Ashlee Jenae. It's about why every fact feels laundered before it hits the feed. Because when the reality is basic, it doesn't need a handler. So demand this of yourself. Why is it being handled now? Why does every fresh leak birth more riddles instead of clarity? Why does core proof feel detached from the legal script? And why does it feel like someone somewhere is betting on the world to get bored before the full horror ever surfaces? That is how tragedies like this vanish, not with truth, but with a void. But here is the catch. They didn't anticipate the internet to keep scrolling. They didn't anticipate ghosts like Jaguar Wright to keep swinging. And they certainly didn't anticipate this tragedy to ignite the kind of heat that refuses to cool. So now the weight moves because the light is no longer a choice. And until every erased fragment is revealed, this case doesn't end. It grows.